Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment of our program is brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. If you're a do-it-yourself kind of person and you spot a neighbor or somebody out in your neighborhood that's got a new trend that's going, something that you're like, wow, I'd like to do that with my driveway. Wow, I'd like to do that with my mailbox. And you're like, how would I figure that out? Where can I get the materials and who could help me line that up? A.G. Hines Company. For 100 years, they've been East Tennessee's best supplier of building materials, tools, and also, with 100 years under their belts, they know how to explain to you how to use the tools, how to use the materials correctly. It's not just go into one of these big box stores, grab something, and then you're on your own. A.G. Hines Company, that's who you need to call. You can see the number right there. You can go visit them right in downtown Knoxville, where they have been for 1 century. It's pretty amazing. All right. South Carolina's offense last year stunk for the most part, but they are expecting changes this year, mainly because they have a new quarterback who they've named and a new offensive coordinator. Let's talk about the quarterback. Here you got it. Colin Hill, who's a transferred in from Colorado State, along with Mike Bobo, their new offensive coordinator. Bobo was the head coach out there. Of course, people around here remember him when he was the offensive coordinator at Georgia under Mark Richt for many years. You see Colin Hill's numbers right there. His career stats compared to the career stats of Jarrett Guarantano, pretty similar. And now Guarantano's played more because he's an 18th year player, but you look at the numbers, very similar in terms of yards per attempt and completion percentage. Now, in terms of Pruitt and Bobo, you go back to 2012, kind of head-to-head. Jeremy Pruitt was defensive backs coach for Alabama. Alabama won the game 32-28. Georgia put up 394 yards of offense in that close game that played into the 2012, I guess that was the year that Alabama wound up beating Notre Dame. That cost Mark Richt a really good shot at a national championship, that game right there, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, Georgia had the ball at the goal line late with the chance to win it.
Right, so offense did pretty well against Bama's defense there. And then you go forward to 2017 when Bobo was at Colorado State. They were a 4-touchdown underdog. They lost 41-23 at Tuscaloosa early in the year. Pruitt was the defensive coordinator. 391 yards for Colorado State. They threw a couple of picks late in the game, but they had a decent day of offense. Is there any reason, I know Tennessee fans aren't really scared of Mike Bobo, and they probably aren't scared of Colin Hill. However, when you look at South Carolina's offense last year and you say, well, they stunk, throw in these two new things, and you throw in a guy who has you would think Bobo has plenty of familiarity with the Alabama-style defense that Pruitt is using here. Is there reason to be concerned that it's a familiar face over there on the other sideline with a new quarterback you haven't seen? Or no?
Well, I think there's always reason to be concerned when you have a situation like that. I think Bobo was actually a better offensive coordinator than he was a head football coach, but I think there's a concern about that with Colin Hill, what they might be throwing at you. You've had a lot of people that are out. We've talked about this earlier with COVID, so who knows what the chemistry is going to be like on your defense. I just think when somebody's coming at you with some different wrinkles, there could be a cause for concern. Now, talent-wise, I don't think South Carolina is gifted on offense that way, but I do think there's some wrinkles they could throw at Tennessee would be problematic.
Yeah, and I would say I think leading up to the start of the season, because of the way the second half went last year for Tennessee against South Carolina, that's created a lot of optimism and a lot of confidence. And I do think Tennessee should be confident going in. Tennessee will be the favorite. See what Chuck says about that later. But also, I think Tennessee should be taking South Carolina seriously. I think the players probably will be. But there's this buildup like, okay, Tennessee will just cruise into Columbia and come back with a win, and that it could play out that way. But a quarterback that's going to understand the system in Colin Hill, who's now playing at a higher level in the SEC, I would take that very seriously if I'm Tennessee going into a game that I think is really important for how the season will play out.
Yeah, well, and you wonder about the trust factor with Will Muschamp. Does he trust Mike Bobo enough to say, hey, you take care of the offense. I'm going to do more with the defense. I'm going to do more of what I do best. Jimmy's exactly right. As a head coach, Mike Bobo was like 28-35, 0-3 in bowl games. He was no more for a bizarre case of neuropathy. The numbness in his arms and his legs. That 2017-18, he had to coach the first game from the press box. He also, as a head coach, lost 7 games by 1 possession in just like a couple of seasons there. So that's why he's no longer Colorado State. And the other thing I'd say, John, was I don't think South Carolina has that dynamic receiver. You know, you had one kid last year made like an OBJ catch at the goal line. They don't have, who's going to be able to catch the ball for them? And another thing, Colin Hill, he's had 3 ACL surgeries.
Yeah.
So if you can get pressure in the face on somebody like that, what kind of mobility does he have?
I would say this, the whole completely, it's one thing if you're going from wishbone to a spread passing offense. Most of these offenses you're seeing today are wrinkles. For example, this is why, is it something to be wary of? Certainly, but why I wouldn't say, oh gosh, Mike Bobo.
Yeah.
How much did Georgia State get hurt by Jim Chaney arriving last year at Tennessee? Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. The players on the field are still going to have to make things happen. So I put it in the show because I think it's worth noting.
Yes.
At the same time, I wouldn't go into it with a lot of fear. My bigger fear would be the fact that last year, when you finally put it all together against South Carolina and whooped them good, every aspect of your team came. It was the best game you played all year. Can you count on defense, special teams, everything this week? Let's talk about talent level very quickly as we go to break. Here's what the SEC coaches came up with. Their all-SEC team, 5 Vols made their list, 5 Gamecocks made their list. Tennessee had the 2 first-teamers, and Trey Smith and place kicker Brent Samaglia. South Carolina had 3 second-teamers, 2 third-teamers. It's interesting. Their corners, second and third team,
Good.
Mel Kiper has a couple of their guys way up on his list, one in his top 5. So their secondary is strong, but in terms of overall talent, 5 for each team in terms of what the coaches in this conference think about all SEC caliber players. All right, when we come back, one of the all-everything players that isn't going to be there for the Vols this year is Jauan Jennings. Can Tennessee replace him effectively? We'll discuss that next. Come on back.